teachers in implementing the digital pedagogy at All Saints policy and guidelines. The idea for the website came from some feedback that I received from colleagues who were taking part in a review and feedback loop process of the new policy document. And the feedback I received at that time indicated that whilst teachers were really happy with the policy and they were grateful for the consistency that it would bring to teaching and learning, there was still a lot of confusion and I guess even concern about how they would select the right tool for the right purpose. They were unsure what tools were out there and how they would know that what they were selecting was doing a great job. So the ToolSync website was created as a bit of a companion tool to provide teachers with that further knowledge and even some very explicit examples about which digital tools could effectively support and enhance learning and teaching and how this might be achieved. So this is the landing page of the website, and it contains a menu up the top which just lists out all of the teaching strategies that have been selected at this point in time. Now, I was very intentional about using the teaching strategy as the search point rather than the digital tool itself, because this certainly supports the TPAC model of technology integration, which was used to inform the digital pedagogy policy. Now, at the moment, we've got eight teaching strategies listed. However, I might add more as time goes on, or if there's some requests for some additions to be made. Most of the teaching strategies chosen came from my research about high impact teaching strategies. So you'll see collaborative learning, metacognitive strategies, effective feedback, explicit teaching, scaffolded instruction, and effective questioning. They are all high impact teaching strategies. But I included two others, and they are probably more context specific. So I chose to include formative assessment as a focused teaching strategy because when I conducted a review of all the technologies units of work across the school, it was really noticeable that formative assessment opportunities were either missing or sort of lacking in purpose and direction. So I thought adding this into the website might provide teachers with some opportunities to develop their knowledge about the teaching strategy and also gain some explicit ideas about how they might do that in their teaching and learning. I also included this teaching strategy, gamification, and that came about as a result of some student data that I collected from all students from years 3 to 6 regarding their preferred learning style and their learning needs. And the data showed that it was really a highly significant portion of students who indicated that they really felt like their learning improved and their understanding of content improved when they were engaged in those sort of educational games. So I thought adding this in as a teaching strategy for teachers might help them to act on that student voice in their own classrooms. So to use the website, a teacher would have in their mind, a specific teaching strategy that they're wanting to use in a lesson, but thinking, they might want a digital tool to help to support or enhance that. So let's say, for example, I've got a science lesson coming up and I know that I want to include some formative assessment, strategies. I just click on that and it takes me to this main page about formative assessment. So the first thing that people get to see is a bit of a rundown on what the teaching strategy is and some examples of what it might look like in a classroom, which is really handy. I've also tried to include some links to some really quality professional learning documents and opportunities. So if a teacher wants to learn more about the strategy, there's a place for them to go where they're guaranteed to find something high quality. So if we have a look here on this Learn More for Formative Assessment, it'll take us over to this page here. It shows a link to the Australian Education Research Organisation, and this is their curated selection of formative assessment professional documents, professional learning documents. So then we come down to this section here, which shows a small range of digital tools which I've identified as possibly effective ways to conduct formative assessment using technology. So the tools that I chose were also chosen very specifically. The majority of them will come from our organisational suite of tools. So in our case, that's the Apple and the Microsoft suite of tools. These have been deemed by our organisation as being safe for student use, so we know that we can happily go along using them, making sure that we're providing that safe use of ICT in our classrooms. If there's anything else outside of the suite that I've included, I have made sure that it has already undergone the BCE due diligence process and been given a rating which indicates that it is safe for us to use in the classroom. So if we're going to have a look at an example, let's say go to Microsoft Teams, for example. And again, the first thing you'll see is a little bit of an overview. Now, even though Microsoft Teams is definitely included for a number of these teaching strategies, this particular page discusses how the tool can support and enhance this particular teaching strategy, which for us is formative assessment. So what we'll see on the side here, and this appears for each of the digital tools, the first thing is that due diligence rating scale. So obviously being from the Microsoft suite, it's low risk, it's green, we know it's all fine for us to use. I've also included a couple of other, like quick guides for teachers so that at a glance they can possibly make some decisions about whether this tool would be appropriate for their students. So the first thing I've included is a year level suitability rating. So I've really just used my own experience and knowledge of the tool as well as students from prep to year 6 to make that rating. So you can see it's yellow for this one. So I've determined that Microsoft Teams could be suitable for children from say year 3 and up. And lastly, we've got here 3 more little icons which I've included to help teachers with understanding the developmental considerations or characteristics that their students might need to be able to interact appropriately with the tool. So for example, we've got the little muscle arm. This represents the idea of physical development. So because it's green, I've indicated that there's nothing in Microsoft Teams that would prevent a typical physically developed child from prep to interact with the tool. But if we look across here, we've got the 3 little people. This is my indication of the social development requirements, and you'll notice that it's yellow. So because Teams has those collaboration and student interaction features, I've made the determination that those are very specific skills that would need to be taught, and students would need to be ready to learn those skills. So perhaps attempting that with students from year 3 and above would be appropriate. And again, we've got another yellow one, the little brain, and this is an indication of the intellectual development required for students. So when I made this assessment, I used, things such as, how much text and reading is required, how intuitive is the user interface, and things like that. So for Microsoft Teams, I've sort of rated it again as a year 3 and above sort of tool. So if teachers have had a quick look and they think, yes, okay, I'm teaching year 5, so this looks like it would be okay, they can continue down, and here is where they will get some specific, explicit maybe, examples of how that tool can be used for the particular teaching strategy that they have searched by. So let's have a look here. Here's an example, polls and quizzes. So we've got a little blurb which explains how Microsoft Teams can be used for formative assessment in this way by creating polls and quizzes. We've also got this SAMR rating. Now that has once again come from the digital pedagogy framework. Teachers are required to use this model to make some assessments about whether the tool that they're using and the way that they're choosing to use it is in fact enhancing the teaching and learning experience. So we're looking for, examples of ways that the tool can be used from this augmentation, modification, redefinition level. Down the bottom, we've got a couple of other little icons, and this is all found on the About page. So, teachers are thinking, well, what's this all about? They can check it out and find the key and the extra information on that page. But this is just a bit of a general guideline that I've included to maybe help teachers to understand how using this particular tool for this particular teaching strategy might enable students to, say, use their knowledge, skills, problem solving, critical thinking, creative thinking. Now, obviously, that really all does depend on how the teacher ends up designing the lesson, but as a bit of a general overview, I've suggested that using polls and quizzes for formative assessment would probably be asking students to use their knowledge, use some critical thinking, and maybe even some problem solving might be in there as well. Now, part of the digital pedagogy framework does require teachers to ensure that the digital tool that they are choosing and that the way that they are going to use that digital tool is accessible to all students in their class. So what I've included for each of the tools is a little bit of a rundown of some of the accessibility features that that particular tool has, and I've grouped it by disability category. So for example, if you had a student with say a sensory disability, say a vision issue, we can see that Teams has a screen reader compatibility. It also also has high contrast mode, which might help students with vision impairment. I've also then included some more specific suggestions about how the tool can be used in this particular context to make functional adjustments for students. So again, this has come from the digital pedagogy framework, which emphasizes the fact that all students have the right to access the curriculum and the learning that we provide in our classrooms. I've sort of included this as well as a bit of a twofold. So as well as being able to search specifically if you've got a student with a particular disability. I've also included these adjustment ideas to sort of help teachers to further develop their inclusive learning environments by exploring some new approaches to engaging and supporting all students using digital tools. So I'm hoping that as people sort of read through and understand some of the different ways that digital tools can really be used to make learning accessible for all of our students, that this will help them to, generalize across to other areas. In the same manner, it's also really important to make sure that the teaching and learning we provide has been differentiated to cater for students of all learning needs. So I've used the Universal Design for Learning model, which has been created to provide those differentiation opportunities. And what I've done is for each of the 3 pillars, so representation, engagement, and expression, I've included a little bit of information and some ideas about how this particular tool supports those. So in terms of selecting a digital tool for a specific teaching strategy, this would be the process that teachers would undergo. Now, as I said before, some of the elements that I've included have a little bit of an extra purpose, I guess. So I wanted to make sure that I included things that were really helping teachers to meet their professional requirements. So things like including this formative assessment list of ideas and tools which could support those ideas. I wanted to also do that so that it could support my colleagues in complying with these curriculum, system, and school assessment requirements. I wanted to make sure, giving effective feedback, that I was providing some support to colleagues in understanding, how they could apply some different timely, effective, and appropriate feedback strategies, specifically using digital tools. And, as I said before, with the development of productive and inclusive learning environments, by giving teachers some new strategies to explore, to engage and support their students. So I'm hoping that this website will be something that grows over time, because I think it's got a lot of helpful things, and it really does support our teachers in moving through that digital pedagogy framework so that by the end they have selected a tool and developed a purpose and a way to use that tool so that the learning environment has been enhanced for our students.